The brutality of men and women knows no bounds, and historically, there has been appalling treatment meted out to people in jails in many countries. Australia has a brutal track record of people who have been incarcerated, and this cruel treatment has left both physical and emotional scars behind in its wake. Australia started building many jails when it first colonised the island continent in 1788, and the sadistic treatment of the prisoners left its mark behind the walls of each prison, where these tortured souls have not been able to move on. One such prison is Geelong Jail, approximately 74 kilometres from Melbourne, Victoria, southeast Australia. The prison was built between 1849 and 1864 and was officially closed in 1991. Many believe the jail is haunted, and when we entered this jail, we certainly captured some creepy paranormal activity, as you'll soon discover. We'll be taking you on a tour of this bluestone fortress with videos and photographs, and maybe you can get a feel of how cold and bleak this building was for hundreds of prisoners for almost 150 years. The entrance. As you enter this prison, you are surrounded by metal. Whether it be the stairwell or the doors that must have constantly been clanging and banging as it echoed throughout the building. Prisoners and warders would hear the constant yelling and screaming of prisoners incarcerated in their small brick and metal tombs, where they would have been locked up for most of the day. This jail was not set up for rehabilitation, but for punishment. So the more you suffered, the more you were paying for whatever crime you committed, to deter you from committing any more crimes and to hopefully keep you on the straight and narrow. As you can see, there was no lack of inventiveness from the prisoners, as they were able to craft various weapons, mainly knives, from whatever they were able to find around them. This photo is an apparition of a guard standing at the bottom of the stairwell, and was taken by the late Gaurav Tiwari during an episode of Haunting Australia in 2016. Gaurav took many shots of the same area, and in one of the photos, this ghostly image appeared. Even more disturbing is that on returning to India, Gaurav died shortly after at home of asphyxiation. His body had been found lying on the bathroom floor with a thin black line across his neck. As we enter the kitchen, something suddenly triggers the EMF meter, sending out a high-pitched scream, as the guide has to tell the spirit to stop, whereas the noise suddenly ceases.
Stop. Thank you. Stop. Alright, so we got something on our hands that likes to rebel.
As we enter the dentist's room, the EMF is again triggered, and again the guide has to tell the spirit to stop triggering the meter.
So they actually hum on your tours though. Thank you. You can stop that now.
So that's interesting.
I think they might actually have something that's following us, to be honest. We don't usually get a lot of connection with that in this room. And if it is following us, I believe it will be Edward.
We believe the guide was referring to a man named Edward George Carr, 36, who worked as a labourer. It was believed that Edward had inflicted grievous bodily harm on a man named James George McKenna during the 1940s. Originally charged with intent to murder, Edward George Carr was eventually sentenced to the Geelong jail, even though the jury charged him with a lesser crime. It is believed his spirit still roams the prison. This is the solitary confinement cell, where you get the immediate feeling of claustrophobia. The bars are set so high that the prisoner was unable to look out. Apparently, this cell left its emotional mark on the inmates, as it is one area that the spirits will not enter. The second floor. We're now going up the stairs to the second floor. And as we reach the top, we're now staring down the dark hallway amid the metal bars and metal mesh. On this floor is the gallows, where there were only 4 executions and all of the other prisoners had to witness. Other than the executions, there were approximately 500 known deaths in the prison, many being stabbings from handmade weapons. The third floor. As we are slowly walking past the cells, the EMF meter, which at this stage had been turned off, suddenly turned itself on, triggering its high-pitched whistle. That is interesting. Notice the red tinge around the bars, which gives an eerie effect. This cell was known as the cage, which held 3 men, and you can see the holes in the walls, which would be covered over with papier-mâché that blended in with the plaster. Here they tried to conceal contraband. And here is the loose floorboards that also concealed more object. It was from this cell that 3 men tried to escape, and you can see the cut in the bars where they tried to make their way to freedom. On entering another cell, the EMF meter is again triggered, where the guide again asks the spirit to cease interfering with the meter, where again it suddenly stops. As you look up the walls, you can see where dried blood had trickled down. As we were walking along looking down into the second floor, you will notice how dark it is. But later, we found that one of the lights in the cell had been turned on, but certainly not by anyone in our group. In this cell, although we're looking at a rusty old bed frame, beds were not introduced until the 1920s, and before that, prisoners were forced to sleep on straw mats that looked like dog beds. Each cell was issued with 2 buckets, one filled with water for drinking and the other was used as a toilet. The toilet bucket was only emptied once a week. In this photo, We could not find the source of this light, though we are willing to accept that it could be related to the camera. Nevertheless, it is still baffling. In this light source, the EMF meter was triggered, and if you look closely at the glow, there appears to be a face or maybe a trick of the light. Cell 45 has an interesting story where a visitor reported to a guide that she had seen a ghost inside the cell. Then a week later, another visitor also reported to the same guide that they had also seen a ghost in the same cell. The hospital. Upon walking into the hospital room, there is a mysterious trapdoor in the corner. The trapdoor was where the dead bodies were dropped down to the morgue below. And if a body got stuck, a guard would be called to pull the body free. And in extreme cases, if the body was too stiff with rigor mortis, a hacksaw was used to dismember the body in order to release it. The reason the trapdoor was built was to stop bodies from being carried out the door of the hospital, where they would be witnessed by other prisoners who would go berserk. The morgue. Apparently, there is a woman called Mary that haunts the morgue, who they claim is attached to the morgue table. Reason being is that she gave birth on the table where both mother and child passed away. As we enter the room, the EMF meter is immediately triggered, where the guide again orders it to stop.
Stop! Thank you.
If you look carefully at the sink, there appears to be drops of blood. This photo shows a huge purple orb, and inside the orb is a dark patch that does not appear in other photos in that area of the morgue. Conclusion. Many tour guides, mostly females, reported being scratched by an unknown entity, so this place is not for the faint-hearted. One of the guides, Jodie Hamer, reported that she was scratched and groped in the prison kitchen, whereas she ran out screaming. There are also cases of residual hauntings where an emotional imprint is left as a permanent reminder of the physical and emotional suffering of the prisoners. If you ever visit Melbourne, Australia, why don't you pay Geelong Jail a visit? That's if you're brave enough. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more abandoned or haunted locations, comment below and subscribe to Weird World.